Hey everyone! Hi guys! It is now 7 o'clock. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds for more people to join. But whilst we wait, I just want to remind you guys what am I doing tonight. So as I mentioned earlier this week, Her Way Out has joined hands with Norton Fulbright here in South Africa, and we're starting an Instagram live series. So once a month we're going to go live like this and speak about different legal topics just to share knowledge. Sometimes the law can be very intimidating and it can seem quite complex. Most times it is. But we kind of want to break it down and just share knowledge. So tonight we're going to be speaking on marital regimes, and we have Candace who's going to be chatting to us. I'm going to accept or invite her now to the live, and then we can get started. Thank you guys for all your comments. Please share your love and engage. Like if you find this interesting or you have any, definitely, attend to it. Okay. Cool. Hi, Candace.
Hi, Peony. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
You
How
look
are you?
stunning as usual.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you. Thank you for joining this live and our very first Instagram live that Her Way Out is doing. I'm very excited, so I'll just hand over to you. Maybe you can introduce yourself to our people on this live.
So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for giving me this platform. My name is Candace Belay, and I'm a lawyer here at Norton Rose Fulbright. I'm the head of social impact, and a lot of what we do is we go out into communities and teach people the law and empower them so that they better understand their rights.
Exactly, I love that. And that's what Her Way Out is trying to do as well. We're trying to empower people by educating them on their legal rights. And our topic today is marital regimes. So before we get into that, um, when I think about a marriage, I first thing that comes to my mind is a wedding, glitz and glamour, and a beautiful dress and flowers. But can you tell us exactly what is a marriage?
So, quite right. We all get excited, but outside of the butterflies and the color scheme and the flowers and all of that, you know as well as I do as lawyers that a marriage is a legal relationship in our law. It's where two, and in some cases, more people, two or more people, individuals decide that they're choosing each other as their partners in a personal and intimate relationship, and then they decide to make it a legal relationship, and they can do this by solemnizing their marriage through a religious forum. They can go to a religious a church or a temple and go to a religious leader to solemnize their marriage, or they can go to the Department of Home Affairs and say, I am making this commitment to you. And marriages are anyone can marry anyone. South Africa is very, very progressive, so there's no restrictions. We have the Marriages Act that governs marriages between a man and a woman. We have the Civil Unions Act that now allows same-sex couples to get married. And we even have the recognition of African customary marriages that gives recognition to the different customs and rituals that take place when someone wants to solemnize their marriage. Of course, some traditional marriages still require a civil registration with a marriage officer, like Hindu marriages, Muslim marriages, Jewish marriages, for example. But there is still that recognition of a civil marriage by signing the marriage register by a certified marriage officer, and many religious leaders are certified marriage officers as well.
It's what I love about South African law. I think it recognizes a lot and it incorporates a lot. It's very fair in that sense. So you mentioned there's different ways, different regimes rather. So can you explain to us what is a marital regime and what are these differences between them?
Mm. So we often say to people when we talk about marital regime, we're talking about furniture. It's not about love. And people say, "Oh, No, it's in COP, out of COP. So
Yeah.
we have three specific marital regimes in South Africa. And most people say is married in community or property,
Mm-hmm.
right? What's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. And you share everything 50-50. And that's correct because that is the one marital regime you choose. So when you and your partner decide to tie the knot, you saying, I'm sharing everything with you, not just my life, not just my love, not just my time and attention, but I'm also sharing my assets with you and my liabilities. You're going to pay my Edgar's account as well.
Unfortunately,
My Edgar's
yeah.
account is your Edgar's account, or whatever the debt is, and so that's the default position that people can marry that way. But our law, like you said, is progressive and is evolved, and we have something called marriage out of community of
Mm-hmm.
property. And in the olden days, many business people preferred this way of doing it because it was a way to protect their spouse. And
Mm-hmm.
this is very often misunderstood. But people say, "Oh, it's a divorce contract." No, it's not. It's a way to protect your spouse from creditors. And with marriage out of community of property, which is the second marital regime, you're saying what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine. And that is because you want to protect your assets from the risk and you want to protect your spouse and your spouse's asset from risk. And then, of course, we have the third marital regime. So it doesn't matter how you're married, whether you're married in a church or in a temple or in an African customary traditional marriage. The third one is a marriage with out of community of property, but with an accrual, and that's a hybrid of the first marital regime and the second marital regime. So basically, saying whatever you had before the marriage is yours. Whatever we build together within the marriage, we're going to share. So, just to summarize, the first one says we share everything 50-50 in community of property. The second one is we're not going to share anything, but we're going to protect each other from risk, and that's out of community of property with an anti-nuptial contract. And the third one says we're not going to share what we accrued before the marriage. We're going to share everything within the marriage, and
Mm-hmm.
that's an accrual.
Yeah, it is a lot to consider actually, when you love someone, it's sometimes when you choose to actually get married to that person, there is a lot of things that you need to consider. Your love for that person, also you need to remember that you also want to protect that person as well as yourself. So it brings me to my next question. So let's say, for example, I choose a specific marital regime, and at a later stage, is it possible for me to change that?
Correct. Correct, 100%. And we get this question all the time because when people start off, they don't know where their life would lead.
Mm,
And very often you find that they become entrepreneurs or they go into business or they acquire assets and then they want to choose it. So yes, you can change your marital regime, especially if you made in community or property. You can bring a high court application because remember the high court will be the court that will change your status, so to speak. And you satisfy the judge that you are not prejudicing your creditors. You're not doing this because you want to defraud them or don't want to pay them, but you're
mm,
doing this because you've realized now that perhaps in your job or in your business, you are facing certain risks that might affect your home and the marital home. It might affect the asset that you and your partner have bought and savings that you'll have saved towards that might
mm,
be taken by creditors. So it is really a way of protecting the assets. And a lot of people are moving towards being married out of community property with accrual because it's a way to say things up front that
mhm,
this is for my children or this is for my wife when you're protecting it from your families and there's no presumptions there. So it is
mm.
becoming quite popular. So you can change it. It's always good to do it before you get married. And any time before you marry, people sign it 1 year before they get married. They can sign it 10 minutes
Okay.
before they get married. It doesn't matter. It's better to do it before, but it's not impossible to change it once you've decided to marry in community of property and then later on have changed your mind because your circumstances in life has changed.
There must be a legitimate reason.
Of course, and you mustn't be doing it to defraud your creditors. That's the most important thing. And even the banks that you bank with and your employer, your medical aid, they must know that you are changing this and there's a good reason for doing so.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. So the next question I have for you is a little bit different. It's got to do with surnames. So commonly, um, a female would often change her surname to her husband's, right?
Mm,
But is that the case legally? And what are the consequences? And what
mm.
happens in civil unions where partners of the same sex decide to get married? Who needs to change their surname?
Well, the thing is, I think that's the common presumption we have that somebody has to change their name.
Yeah.
In fact, nobody has to change their name. You can keep your own surname after you get married. Any partner can choose to change their surname. There's so many men taking on their wife's surname these days,
Yeah.
and just because they like it better, or maybe they have an affinity with the wife's surname than or the one partner's surname than the other partners. There really is no obligation to change. I see many people having double barrel surnames because
Yes.
they're inclusive and then they want both surnames to really represent who they are, which is great as well. The thing is that in the olden days, it did make it much easier when you had children
Mm-hmm.
to everyone have the same surname. And of course, with traveling with your children, it does create confusion. And now you have more paperwork to carry with you and unabridged birth certificates. So parties will choose to have the same surname because they might say we love each other. Of course, I want to be known as your spouse, and I will take your surname, and that's fine. But you'll get parties who decide, well, we are still individual. We might be having businesses in our own name. We are both graduates, so our graduation certificates are in our maiden names.
Yes.
We might want to keep our maiden name for that reason. It's a professional career, so you want to keep that.
Mm.
But like I said, there is no compulsion to change your surname. The choice is entirely yours, and either party can decide to change their name.
Mm. That's super interesting. I'm just reading a comment here. Someone says in Iran, they don't change their last name when they get married. So I suppose they just keep their surname, and they get married, and that's it.
Well,
So then I
that's
think
very progressive.
yes, it is, right? So
Mm,
then in a situation like that, the child, does the parent then choose the surname for, if they have to have a child from the marriage, or does the child
correct.
take
Mm,
both surnames?
mm. Correct. I think that's what you try to do because you would then have a child and then decide the name of the child and the surname that the child is going to take. And you might well decide the child would have both the name of the mother and the father in their name. And you often see that happen in South Africa as well. People say, no, my middle name is my father's name, or it is my mother's name, or my grandfather's name. So the parents will then choose. I think, though, from an administration point of view and from birth certificates and travel and things like that, does make it easier when everybody has the same surname. But really, I think the world has gone beyond, uniformity. People really do want to express their own identity. And so
Mm-hmm.
you can identify it whatever name that you feel comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
No, I love that. I love that progressiveness. I really do.
mm,
Um, the next thing I wanted to find out from you is, if I decide to get married, is it enough for me to just sign the contract
mm,
at home, or what are the actual requirements to make my marriage like legit in the eyes of the
mm,
law?
mm. Now, that's actually a very important question, Brioni, because most people don't realize that there are formalities to getting married. And we often may draw a distinction between living together, which is recognized as cohabitation, and actually then complying with all of the steps. And you'll find even in customary marriages, there are a number of criteria or steps that you need to follow.
Mm-hmm.
In South Africa, it's quite simple. You have to be over 18 to get married.
Yes.
Of course, in circumstances where parties are minors, their parents can consent for them, but of course, we don't allow child marriages, so within reason.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, the first criteria is that you have to be over 18. Secondly, it must be voluntary. You think that would be funny. Why would I not want to get married? But the criteria is there. You must willingly go to the altar, not kicking and screaming. So it has
Mhm.
to be voluntary.
Mhm.
And of course, there must be a marriage officer. The marriage officer is the officiating person, and is the one that creates the legality, because it is a contract you're entering into. It is a legal agreement.
Mm.
And so that marriage officer must be a qualified marriage officer. You'll find like all religious priests and persons will probably have a qualification as a marriage officer. But if not, the Department of Home Affairs have marriage officers who, if you make the right arrangements, will come out to your wedding and then and sign the marriage register, because that's what you do. You sign a marriage register, and then you need witnesses. Right. So the law requires only two witnesses.
Mhm.
Although I don't know anyone who's invited two people to their wedding.
Right.
But if you're going to Home Affairs, you just need two witnesses there. And because you need witnesses to the contract, just like any legal
Yeah.
contract, you must have somebody that witnesses that it was you that signed the contract.
And that you
And
signed it voluntary.
correct.
Mhm.
Yes. So I mean, those few requirements, they might seem a lot, but they're actually not, and we
Yeah.
kind of just do it in any event.
Yes.
Mm, mm,
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. It doesn't seem too much.
mm.
And when you think about conventional weddings, there is always a marriage officer
Correct.
there, whoever the partners decide to choose, and there are way more than two witnesses. So some people even have their pets to witness them get married. So no, it seems quite simple and straightforward in South Africa.
Mm, mm,
So lastly, before we wrap up, I wanted to find out our South African law is very progressive for people who are simply choosing to live together without getting married. And besides the moral commitment and the choosing to love someone for the rest of your life, what are the actual benefits to get married and sign the contract with this person?
aside from growing old together,
Yeah,
no,
have someone
there
to
are
scratch
lots of
back at
benefits.
night.
Someone to rub your back.
Yes, totally.
So aside from that, there are a lot of legal consequences to actually being married. The law recognizes that aside from whatever marital regime you choose, you have a common law duty to care for one another. So actually caring for one another,
Mm,
maintaining, not buying separate loaves of bread. You buy yours, I buy mine.
yeah.
You know, being there as an emotional support, um, and sickness and in health, to borrow a term, that is still a common law right and duty. You actually have to give affection to one another. I've
Mm,
often seen this in divorce, where you've withdrawn affection, and it is there. It's an obligation in a way
mm,
to give love and affection to one another. Legally speaking, there are many benefits. You have in the Administration of Estates Act, one of the things that they do is, when a marriage is terminated by death, one of the first things that the master will look for is who is the
mm,
spouse, who is the legal or the lawful spouse. And where there is no will, that lawful spouse is then appointed as an executor, as the default position, if that lawful spouse is supposed to, is still willing and able to be an executor. There's also many insurance contracts that will have a spousal benefit. Or pension funds or provident funds. There's a specific spousal benefit. So if you are married to somebody, you are entitled to that spousal benefit. There's the division of the estate, and the law has so many protections in terms
mm,
of the division of the estate. So when the marriage comes to an end, and we always say it's either death or divorce, so it's not always we're going to divorce, but even when the marriage comes to an end on death,
mhm,
there is so many protections in place, because you have that legal document that says contractually, I
mhm,
am married to this person. The estate that we have accumulated over a whole lifetime belongs to us. It is an estate that must still now be divided. And so nobody can come and take away your curtains and pots
Mm,
and start removing things, because that is the protection. And then during the marriage as well, there are a number of protections or benefits that you say that between spouses that the law then affords you. And you'll see always, they say, what is, we need the consent of your spouse, so it protects you from adverse credit, or risks that you are going and taking out loans. They're always looking for that kind of protection. So cohabitation is not something that's without protection. I just want to say that, but it
yeah.
is. But the reason why I'm saying there are benefits in a legal relationship is because it is clearly defined, and especially when you have children, children are presumed to be children within the marriage. So you don't have to prove paternity when you have children within a marriage, because it's presumed. And so access to your children, maintenance to your children is that much easier. When you
Mhm,
have parties that are not married together,
mhm,
married to each other, and then they have children, there is a
mhm,
greater burden on the
mhm,
party that doesn't have the child to go to court and say, please, I want to see my child, because they
mhm,
have to prove that they are a caring parent, or please, I want maintenance, because they have to prove that the child belongs, to that person you're claiming maintenance from. But
mhm,
within a marriage, those presumptions are already made. You
mhm,
don't have to go and prove that to the court and beg for that. And then just want to touch on cohabitation as well. For those who are cohabiting, it's not that you do not have rights that married persons have. It's just that married persons will have defined rights by virtue of their marriage, by virtue of this contract. But if you are cohabiting with a person, and the relationship comes to an end, the road to get what you put in, or to be recognized in terms of the assets that you'll have accumulated, is that much harder, because you're going to have to go to
mhm,
court. You're going to have to prove how long you were together,
mhm,
who paid for all of this, who maintained each other. So often when we look at it, we say it's not impossible if you are cohabiting and the relationship comes to an end. A lot of the law focuses on when contracts end, not when contracts are enforced. We're quite happy when contracts are carrying on and everyone's fulfilling the terms of their contracts.
yeah.
But when that contract comes to an end, that's when it becomes important. And I can tell you, because marriage is a contract, it makes it much easier to deal with the proprietary consequences, like the furniture
Mm,
and the savings and the pension and the spoons and the curtains, and of course dealing with the children as well,
yeah.
maintenance and access and custody, than it is if you are just cohabiting with someone and yet you still have children with them, and you have a home and a life. You lose some of that protection
Mhm,
than if you were in a marriage.
mhm. Wow, Candice. Well, thank you for that. We started off at the beginning. I started off thinking a marriage is these butterflies and a beautiful dress, to knowing that a marriage is just black ink on white paper.
Oh, you can make it all colors of the rainbow ink on
Yeah.
any color paper. I mean, it is all that, and we try to explain to people that yes, it is really about your emotions. It is about your commitment to the person. It's what you promise them. But of
Mhm,
course, we live in a world that is surrounded by a legal framework, and so
mhm.
if you love that person, then take the time to protect them
Yeah.
in terms of the marriage contract, and how you buy assets, how you sell assets, how you save money, how you build a home together. And that's all it is. It's just take time to consider all your legal options before you actually take that step and that journey that you're promised to each other.
Mm. No, I love that, and you've really simplified it for everyone. There is a question here, if I can just read it out. It says, if a spouse breaks their vows or marriage contract in the sense that they don't show affection, is there any legal consequences or something like that if a divorce happens?
Yes. So in South Africa, we only have one reason that you can divorce, one ground of divorce, and that is if the relationship has broken down irretrievably, right? So it doesn't matter what the person has done, but if you feel that you can't fix that relationship, then you can go and approach a court, and a judge or a magistrate will grant you a divorce. But you would have to say, to the judge why you think that that relationship cannot be broken. So many people will use infidelity as an example. They will
Mm-hmm.
use maybe alcohol and drug abuse or as an example, and lack of affection as an example,
Mm-hmm.
but it is not the cause. The cause is that this, I can't fix it anymore. It's broken beyond repair.
Mm-hmm.
And in those circumstances, the court will grant a divorce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's broken beyond repair, and those are
Correct.
the examples. Yeah. Someone else says here that in Brazil, there are many children without last names from neither their father or mother. So that's quite interesting. I don't know
It
what
is.
happens in instances like that.
Mm.
Just
The law is very different, but at least our constitution guarantees every child a name and an identity. So I think that's what's wonderful about South Africa's constitution, and in its family law as well. It is extremely progressive and it's changing and evolving all the time.
No, it really is. I think there's always new things that's coming in. There's new bills being passed. So it's always important to keep a lookout, or if you do have a lawyer, always get advice and always speak to them, especially when you are thinking of getting married, because it's always wedding season. So it's just something that you need to be aware of.
Mm.
Um, well, yeah, Candace, that brings it to the end of our live, and I think we've spoken through some very interesting stuff regarding marital regimes. We touched on some interesting topics under marital regimes, and I think, like I said earlier, you've simplified and you've summarized it for us. So it was very interesting for me. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much for the chat. I enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I hope everyone watching also enjoyed it. And if you have any follow-up questions, please, you can send either me or Norton Rose a DM, and we can definitely take it from there.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, Candace. Bye.
Bye.
Are you sure you want to end your live?